Hi everybody, welcome back to a tactics video. This time how to use the Ratlings snipers, a new plastic kit for Astra Militarum. Let's look at how to actually use this unit. Just like in previous videos, I go through the actual unit itself, how to effectively use it in my perspective, and check out this playlist here to see other videos where I cover units like the Kazkin, Transport, Battle Line, Lord Solar, you name it, Gaunt's Ghost. I've looked at how to actually use the units on the tabletop for Warhammer 40,000, 10th edition as at August of 2025. So let's have a look first at their data sheet. To get familiar with the actual unit, and if you're familiar with this, do forward ahead about 5 minutes to get to the actual mid of the presentation. But let's look at their key data sheet. So firstly, you can take 5 or 10 models. Yeah, you can take 5 or 10, and if you take 5 it's 60 points, and if you take 10 it's 100 points. You get a bit of a discount if you take 10 versus 5. So 60 or 100, which is basically 20-point discount if you were to simply go 60 by 2. Now their actual core rules is a 6-inch move, toughness 2, 6+ save, 1 wound, 8+ leadership, and OC of 1. So what you've got here is probably the squishiest unit on the tabletop, definitely for Astra Militarum. I'm thinking even more squishy than say Nurglings, so that means toughness 2. Literally every single weapon system in the game is winning you on 2s. You've got a 6-up save, which means in a lot of cases you've got a 0-up save. You've got 0 save. Even if you're in cover, you have effectively a 5-up save, but okay, fine. 1 wound, yeah, cool. Leadership of 8 means you're going to fail battle shock all the time. And that's way worse than, well, that's worse than pretty much all Astra Militarum units of leadership 7. So these boys definitely a bit more scaredy cat and OC 1. So again, hyper squishy, exceptionally squishy little unit here. Toughness 2, 6-up save means against most weapon systems you've got a very poor chance of surviving anything, and we'll get to this as a key point in a second. Now their weapons are, if you take a 5-man, you get access to sniper rifles. They've got the heavy keyword, they've got precision, which is excellent, 36-inch range, 1-shot hitting on 3s, which is good. So if you keep still, you're hitting on 2s. Okay, cool. Strength 4 AP to 2 damage. So this is a relatively weakish sniper rifle. You think Kazkin have got a strength 4 AP to 3 damage, so only 2 damage. Does make it less deadly, obviously, but it kind of makes sense because these actual Ratlings are tiny little dudes, and if they fight like a big sniper, will probably break their shoulders from the Royal Corps. But anyway, so you've got 5 attacks, hitting on 3s at 4 to 2, so you're going to tickle some characters or tickle other units, and if you take 10 models, you can give one of them the tank stopper rifle, which is same range, it's heavy, not precision, but it's 9-3d6. So it's like a crack missile, kind of. I think crack missiles are strength 10. Anyway, so that's helpful. The melee output is a joke. You're hitting on 5s with 1 attack with strength 2. Okay, cool. Now their abilities, and this is when there's a bit to be discussed, is they can infiltrate, which is fantastic. And to be really clear on what infiltrate means is that you can deploy them anywhere on the board at the beginning of the game, outside your opponent's deployment zone. You've got to be 9 inches away from the deployment zone and 9 inches away from other enemy models. And this is a key one we'll look at a bit later, is a key use for them. They then got stealth, which means they're -1 to hit and ranged attacks all the time. So this is helpful. However, toughness 2, 6-up save means anything that gets through is going to wound them and it's probably going to kill them. So do not think that stealth is going to make them more survivable. It will obviously make them more survivable. Is it going to save these little furry little rattling dudes? The answer is not really. Then they've got Shoop, Sharp, and Scarpa. So in your shooting phase, after you just shot, not with engagement mode of enemy models, it can make a normal move as if it was your movement phase. If it does so, you can't charge. So effectively means you could move 6 inches, shoot their weapons, and then move 6 inches any direction, which is actually helpful. Then the options, wargear options, are effectively you can take a Ratling battle mutt, which is a little doggo. This doggo model down here, which is super cool. It's got some specific rules, and once per game you can basically pop lethal hits. Now, I'm pretty sure that rule only works, so it only works if you take 10. So if you take 10, you can take the battle mutt, you can take demolition gear, and you can take a tank stopper rifle. So to get these rules here, you've got to have 10 models. So you get the tank stopper round. If you take 10, you can take that option. You would then get the Ratling battle mutt because it's for free. Why wouldn't you take it? So you get lethal hits, which is certainly helpful. And then if you take demolition gear, which you would also take because it comes for free, is you can get the grenade keyword. So that's good. So if you want to take 10, go all in, and get a little bit more lethality out of the units. Now keywords is simply infantry, Imperium, and Ratlings. Okay, so they can get grenade if you take 10. They don't have regiments, which is an issue, and they can be led by nobody. So they can't be led by, and that would kind of make sense. Maybe a commissar could lead them. That'll be cool. The commissar yelling at these little dudes to keep an order and actually be a bit more disciplined, but that's it. So hyper squishy unit with a little bit of output, a little bit of minor jank, with the key aspect being infiltrators, in my opinion. So now let's go to what this unit won't do, its negatives. And this is the same structure I follow for all the videos I've done. So what are the negatives? As called out just then, they won't survive against literally any attack. So as soon as your opponent stares at them nastily, gives them a bit of a tough look, you might as well just pick them off the board. You know, if you get even, I don't know, 10 bolter shots, you know, hitting on 3s, okay, hitting on 4s, but then they're winning on 2s, you're saving on 6s, maybe 5s if you're in cover. All very cute, but let's agree off the bat that this unit does not survive against anything remotely. Basically anything in the game will kill them. You know, even if you had, like, you know, your jungle fighters hit them with 15 las gunshots with rapid fire range, you're going to kill them. Let's just be honest. Now, they won't do much damage with little asterisks. There are ways to make them a bit more damagey. So if you take them as 10, they've got more options in it. There are some ways to configure them, not configure, but some ways to use rules to make them a bit more spicy. But broadly speaking, they're not going to do loads of damage, yeah? Not like Kazkin or Scions or Limerus Battletech, let's just agree that. Now, not having the regiment keyword presents a ginormous problem, and it's the same issue that the Bolgrams face, or the Ogrins, albeit Bolgrams are quite well costed and Ogrins are quite well costed as well now, is that this basically means that you aren't supported by most attachment rules, nor, crucially, not supported by the army rule, which is orders. So this fundamentally means that the data sheet you see in front of you is all you've got to work with. There are some stratagems, there's a couple of attachments to talk about, but just think holistically, they can't be ordered to do anything. They used to be able to before the Codex was released, before they nerfed Lord Solar, as he could order everything in the book, which makes sense because he's the Lord Solar, but now he can't. So what you see is what you've got from an order rule perspective, and except for a couple of key detachment exceptions, which I'll speak to, is most attachments don't support them. So the most common one we're seeing most of the time is combined arms. They don't benefit because they don't have regiment or squadron, obviously. And there's several others that, one good example, another one is recon element. They don't have the regiment keyword, they don't get the benefits of cover, which could actually make them a bit more survivable, but again, they don't have that. So to be very clear, you have literally just the data sheet in most cases to work with. Now, 60 points does feel a little bit expensive. I mean, what you're pretty much paying for here is the infiltrate keyword and the fact they've got sniper rifles. So, you know, I'm just a dude who plays Warhammer. I don't know how they work this out, but 60 points does feel a little bit expensive. If they're like 55 or 50, then they'll just be like, yeah, auto include, but definitely, as I keep an eye on the top winning Astra Militarum lists, is they do pop up sometimes, but they're not super common in the most competitive list. I still think they're a good unit. They're not an amazing unit, but they're not bad. And then, of course, if you want to take 10, which I would question what's the purpose of that, and there is one exception to that, and we'll look at it a bit later, but you know, if you're taking 10 for 100 points, yes, you've got a discount because it would be obviously 120 for 10 if you did simple mathematics. However, just think Gaunt's Ghost is 110 points for 6 dudes who do arguably way more and survive way longer because they're lone op than 10 little furball dudes with sniper rifles. So it feels a little bit expensive, and even at 100 points, they still are expensive compared to what you can get. So yeah, again, Gaunt's Ghost 110 points, Kazkan 110 points, and those two units can do so much more than these 10 little furballs. But what are their positives? So being in infantry units, they can move freely around the board, which is fantastic. So unlike a Limerus Battletech, a Scout Sentinel, Artillery Rough Riders, Death Riders who can't move through terrain easily. They've got to go around terrain. Just like all infantry, this can move through terrain pieces with no hindrance, so that's very good. Now, being infantry means you are supported by some stratagems. Some key ones to call out is, for example, in Recon Element, whatever the one is where you can zone out deep strike outside 12 inches, keys off the infantry keyword. I'm very sure it does. It does. Also in Mechanized Assault, in that detachment, you've got the stratagem sweep and clear. So they come out of a transport, a unit on an objective that's a target. You get 4 rolls to hit and to win. That keys on infantry as well. So there are some stratagems sprinkled throughout the codex which do key off infantry, but they're definitely not as well supported as, say, Regiment, for example. Now, 25mm bases means they've got a tiny little footprint, which means if you stick 5 of them in a little package, it's actually going to be a very small footprint. I could do the math, but I'm not going to bother. But the point of that is they can be hidden in nice little like janky bits of terrain or like nicely tucked away out of line of sight, because given they're quite small bases, only 5 of them, the footprint is fundamentally very small. Now on the flip side, 5, if you string them out properly, because remember, if it's 5 models, they've got to have 2 inches between. They can have a map. Their coherency requirements is 2 inches between each model. Means you probably could get roughly 15 inches of coverage, and this is important to talk about in a key use we'll look at. Now, if you go to 10, it's going to be further, but not as far, because remember, if you've got 10 models, the coherency requires to be 2 inches of 2 models. Now, I'm not going to do the math again, but again, 5 models, which I think is the main way to use them, except for one key exception. You've actually got a very small footprint, or actually quite a large bit of coverage as far as just lining them up like that. Now, we're the only multi-model count low-cost infiltrate unit options. So what I mean by that is we've got Gaunt's Ghosts. So we've got Gaunt's Ghost. We've also got infiltrate option of Sly Marbo, but he's one little single dude. As much as it looks bloody badass, he's only one dude, as opposed to 5 models, which can extend out. And also, the way I kind of view it is that using them for some of the use cases we'll speak about in a second, they're much better an option at 60 points or 100 points if you want to go all in, as opposed to using 110 points of Gaunt's Ghost for some of the stuff I'll speak about in a second. Now, they can be configured to do a bit more damage, as spoken about. For example, the stratagem I called out Sweep and Clear Mechanized Attachment. If you take 10, you can then get a tank stopper rifle, which has got a bit more DACA. You can get lethal hits once per game, which is good. And you can also throw grenades. So that means that you could tickle a lot of units. Infantry units don't bother against tanks. Why would you? Unless you're getting desperate. So they could do a bit more damage if you really want to go down that pathway. Now, within that, of course, sniper rifles can be helpful in certain circumstances. I mean, sniper rifles are sniper rifles. The precision keyword is the precision key, which means that you can pick out characters in amongst an attached unit. So this actually could be somewhat helpful. Imagine if you've got a great example, which I hate, is playing Necrons, and they've got the Wraiths, and they've got, I think it's a Technomancer, the character, which gives them the 5-up Feel No Pain. So if you've got your 5 or 10 Ratling snipers to point at that one character, shoot a little guns at him, maybe one-shot him, that actually means that that unit loses their 5-up Feel No Pain, which pretty much kills off the unit. So I've said they don't do much damage, but in certain circumstances, maybe you pull Assassinate early and then get line of sight on a character, and suddenly you score Assassinate when you didn't think you could. So there will be cases where it could actually work. So don't dismiss it off the bat, but it's I think a bit of a minor one. Now, Move Shoot Move allows for some minor jank, and I'll speak about in a second. But I think, how many reactive moves have we got in the game? So we've got reactive move. This is almost like not a reactive move. It's in a sense what your opponent does. You can react to that, but it's one more option to do a bit more movement jank. Is the other options we've got is Death Riders. They can reactive move. And then in Recon Element, you can pay a CP, and all platoon units, a platoon unit can reactive move 6 inches. So this is one of the only few options we've got in the codex where you can sort of do a bit more jank out of sequence moving. You can move in the shooting phase, which certainly allows for a bit of tricky play sometimes. Right, so now let's look at effective use. And this is my perspective on this. So I've played them a fair bit recently. It took me a while to sort of warm up to them. I've got the metal ones. The first sentence is the primary way to use them, is that they allow you to counter infiltrate And what that means is if your opponent's got infiltrate, and let's say if they've got multiple infiltrate options, of course you should be asking these questions before you put the first drop on the table. The first unit is saying, have you got any scout moves? And they go yes, no, yes or no. Have you got any infiltrate? And if they say they've got yes, they've got infiltrate, and you can choose to go first or second because you've rolled the higher roll to get the game started, that's when you would basically use the counter infiltrate play. And this is where the 15-inch footprint could be quite helpful because, you know, I don't know, maybe playing orcs and they've got 2 units of commandos. Maybe you string them out in a certain way, your 5 ratlings, that you basically block off where these commandos can be deployed. Because remember, as per the infiltrate rule, for some of you probably don't know this, but given that when you drop in an infiltrate unit, can't move within 9 inches of an enemy unit or the deployment zone, if you just imagine no man's land is like a strip like that, and you want to protect this corner down here, you put your little ratlings lined up across that way, and that means the sneaky commando orcs can't get in that area because you've zoned them out. So counter infiltrate is certainly a very good option. Or even if you're playing tower, they've got the ghost kill, that really annoying you know, big robot suit. That's, I think, lone op, and it's got loads of other jank. Is if you want to block that thing away from, you know, going into a certain part of the deployment zone, into your deployment zone, that's where you use them. So counter infiltrate certainly is a very good option. Then of course you can use them to block aggressive scout moves. So if your opponent, I can't think of any examples right now, but if your opponent's got like is quite an aggressive army that has got units that can scout move, and that therefore close the gap onto your army to basically charge and you know, move, advance and charge potentially, you would basically wait in that instance until they've put down their aggressive scout move units, and then basically put your rattling snipers stood 9 inches away right in front of them. So that does mean if you go second, they're dead meat. But would you prefer that your opponent could scout move 6 or 9 inches, be even close to the rest of your army, and then charge into you and make a mess of your game because you're just stuck, you know, trying to clear your way through these nasty charger dudes. Now, likewise, even if it don't have a scout move, if your opponent's got some nasty advance and charge threats, and again, you should be asking these questions: do you have infiltrate? Do you have scout moves? And what can advance and charge? Now, if I say yes, I can advance and charge, again, you wait to see where that unit is being deployed, that advance and charge super scary unit. Deploy your rattling snipers there, and basically accept that they're going to get charged into by these super nasty things and die. But of course, you could simply just make the calculation that, let's say they move, I don't know, they move 6. They can advance, and they're going to roll, let's just pretend it's 6, and they can charge. So that means the actual threat range is a maximum threat range of 24 inches, yeah? So maybe in that instance, you're like, right, are they going to make that massive big fat charge in turn 1? The answer probably is no. So it's up, you know, but this is the options, yeah? Yeah, so the last one, of course, is just very simply, is deploy them near your expansion objective. Now, for those of you that aren't, you know, into all the super tactical aspect of 40k, just think of the expansion objective is the one which naturally is the one that you can easier hold. And as you look at deployment zones and like where the objectives are laid in no man's land, it's typically quite obvious which one is easier to hold based on the terrain placement. So again, if you don't have all this stuff to think about, then just put them near your opponent, near your expansion objective, or even your opponents, because you could force them to do certain things. So the main, like fundamentally the effective use for me is predominantly in the early parts of the game. It's fundamentally in the deployment phase. That's where they actually have the most use for me personally, is the counter infiltrate, blocking aggressive scout moves, blocking advance and charge, or very simply just being deployed closer to an objective, yeah, to actually either secure it or contest it against your opponent. Now this then means, and it supports what I spoke about, you know, the low cost, is that, you know, you could do this with Gaunt's Ghosts. Why not? Like Gaunt's Ghosts have got infiltrate, they've got scout, not scout, they've got lone op, so they're essentially the same thing. But I do think using Gaunt's Ghosts for these options is a massive waste of their opportunity, because they've got uppy downy, they can give orders, they've probably got more output than 5 rattling snipers. So I do think, you know, push comes to shove, if you had the option, you would use rattling snipers for these, you know, these scenarios here as opposed to Gaunt's Ghost, and hopefully agree with that. Now then, if you use Lord Solar, if you're using Lord Solar, and I believe there are also some enhancements on some in some detachments where you can redeploy units, is that this is where it pairs quite nicely. Is let's pretend you've done the counter infiltrate play. Yeah, you've actually put them in a certain part of deployment zone. You zoned out these nasty Orc Commando infiltrators, but then for some reason, for whatever reason, opponent puts some Orc Commandos in a position where they can then threaten the Ratlings quite early. Is you could redeploy them, put them a bit further away to make it harder for your opponent. Yeah, so this is where I do think having Lord Solar with Ratlings is a good combination, because that redeploy element is very useful. And do remember, of course, you're doing this before you know who goes first in the game. Before we roll off to see attacker, person who goes first, person who goes second. Or likewise, I don't know, like if you're a bit more advanced and sort of manipulate the way your opponent thinks, is if you're playing some janky mind games, or you put them quite aggressively in a very aggressive spot and you're trying to sort of control where they put their characters, that's cool. Then you basically pick them up, put them into a safer place if you're going for a bit more mind jank play, which I'm certainly not good enough to play that way. Then move, shoot, move. So this enables you to either get at some cheeky shots, basically move out of terrain, take some pot shots at whatever unit. And the thing is, if you can do that, then do it. Like, every shot counts when you're playing Astra Militarum. It's death by 1,000 cuts in this army against your opponent. So if you can move them out of an L-shaped terrain piece, get out, get line of sight onto a unit, onto a character, great. Like, just pop some shots off, move back into cover. Conversely, if you need to basically zone out or movement block your opponent, this is where the move, shoot, move allows you to be even closer to them, because you move out 6, you then shoot, you then move a further 6 inches. And do remember, that rule doesn't stipulate the entire unit has to shoot. It just has to be basically after this unit has shot. So if just one model can shoot, that means the entire unit can do that. So what I often do is, well, I don't often do it, but I may move the Ratlings out. Just one dude can see a target, any target, he just shoots. He doesn't have to hit, he just has to shoot. And that means all him and his mates, or the 4 mates, can then do the reactive, do the further move. So, a scenario potentially is, if you imagine this is an objective mark is my fist, and you want to push out pressure that way to avoid your opponent moving onto the objective, move these boys out, they shoot something that moves 6 inches out, they got a 15-inch roughly coverage, means your opponent now basically has to move, stand right in front of these Ratling snipers, slaughter them, and then they actually can't get physically onto the objective. Because remember, holding objectives can be achieved numerous ways. It can be simply out-OCing your opponent, it can be destroying your opponent's units, or blocking your opponent's units getting onto the objective, which is where the Ratling snipers will be very good at that. And then finally, at 60 points, they're a fantastic action monkey. So again, if you've deployed them in a certain way, whatever it is, and you've got them near an objective, and you've got someone else, say some Kazkin that have to do some shooting, do the Kazkin or the Ratling snipers do the shooting, the Kazkin do the shooting, and the Ratlings do the cleanse secondary objective, for example, do another action, whatever it is. So yeah, so a very good sort of cheap unit for this type of thing. And at 60 points, you can definitely just sort of flick at your opponent and just go, there you go, there's some dudes to get in your way or be annoying, as opposed to, say, doing it with Kazkin, Scions, or a Lim and Rust battle tank, for example. Because 60 points, whilst for their data sheet feels a touch expensive, as I said here, it feels a little bit expensive. Still, 60 points is still quite cheap. It's 5 points less than battle line units, which is good. So it definitely is a good candidate for that. So what are some optimal configurations? And configurations is more the word of using it in an army list. Is that, personally, in my opinion, the 5-man unit is the main way to field them. I don't see the point of ever using a 10-man, except for a key exception we'll speak about. That, of course, is considering the fact if you take 10, you get a discount, you get 20 points off if you take 10 as opposed to 5. You get a bit more DACA for lethal hits and grenade, but then it basically means that you have got double the footprint. Yes, you could string these bad boys across a further footprint in a conga line, cool. But then I'm basically thinking, like, why are you spending 100 points on these 10 Ratlings when you can spend 110 points on Gaunt's Ghost, 110 points on Kazkin, or 100 points on 110 points, whatever it is for Aquilans, for example. Now, the one way you can use them for a 10-man is in Mechanized Assault Detachment. So remember, the Mechanized Assault Detachment, the detachment rule is any Ashmore unit that gets out of a transport gets the +1 to wound. So this is where you could have 10 dudes bundled in a transport, they jump out, they get +1 to wound, you could pop their lethal hits, you could then use a stratagem, sweep and clear, where you get 4 rerolls to hit, 4 rerolls to wound. And this means you've then suddenly got 9 precision, strength 4, +1 to wound, AP2, 4 rerolls to wound as well, and you will kill most characters. Yeah, you're going to get enough hits on target, you're going to get enough wounds on target, you've got lethal hits, and you should kill most characters. Yeah, unless it's like a Primaris, even if it's like a Primarch, or maybe an Adeptus Custodes banana character who've got like 8 wounds or something, but you will one-shot a lot of characters. And that's the one use, and even then, that much DACA going into most infantry targets is going to tickle them. Yeah, because you've got +1 to wound again, you've got 4 reels to hit wounds, so you're going to tickle a lot of character units. So that's the one use that I see here. Now, with that then, is the move, shoot, move ability allows you to do some true jank. So you could have your transport there, these boys jump out, shoot, do all the stuff I just spoke about, and because they move back, and the key wording here, as if it was your movement phase, they can effectively jump back in that transport, which is just chef's kiss. I've personally never done that. I haven't played Mech Assault much myself, but that's the one I know some of my patrons have spoken about. It's been a very cheeky little way to use these little fur balls. As said, Lord Solar's redeployability pairs very well with them, as we spoke about for the counter infiltrate. Whatever you want to do, just pick them up, put them back in a safer place. Overall, however, it's not a unit I would say you build an army list around. It's not like you're going to take 3x10 Ratlings and try and make an army work around them. It's more, it's more part of an overall game plan, obviously. And I personally have been using just a 5-man a lot recently, and I do see a lot of good utility. Definitely the UK TC terrain, UK TC, competitive-ish scene. I'm definitely getting use out of them. So I think 5 of them is fine. Again, they don't pop up in loads of sort of winning tournament lists, which kind of probably points to the fact they're not a hyper meta choice. But they are a tool in the toolbox. I kind of think that if you've got Ratling snipers, one squad, you've then got like jungle fighters in Tauroxes or on foot, you've got scout sentinels, or you've got Kazkin in Tauroxes. Think of it almost as just like layers of junk. You've got some Ratlings in No Man's Land. You've then got scout move stuff into No Man's Land. So you're already starting to apply forward momentum into the game before the game's even begun. So that's definitely how to sort of think about them. So what do you think? Have you used Ratling snipers in 5 or 10-man blobs? How do you use them? If I've made any mistakes with this analysis, let me know. If I've got any rules on, let me know, because I do slip up. I'd love to hear how you find using this actually on the tabletop, because again, I think 5 are fine. 10 I probably wouldn't use, mainly because I've got to paint 5 more. But let me know what you think. So if you enjoyed this video and want to support me, you can do so by like, comment, or by subscribing. Or actually, you can buy some customized dice I've had produced. Check the description below for details on how to buy them, and I will post them to you anywhere in the planet. I'm a true Astra Militarum variety channel. Cover everything from tactic videos like this, hobby videos including painting, kit bashing, and assembling, unboxing videos for kits, and also a bit of lore as well, time to time, including some YouTube shorts, which are super fun to make. I really appreciate all the support I get from my subscribers, and importantly the patrons, who have all got a miniature sign at the end of each video in the Patreon Platoon roll call. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, please look also in the description below. Super thanks to all the supporters out there. I really appreciate the support you give me as a YouTube creator. Let's get your bayonet sharp, last gun oiled. Faith in the Emperor strong. Patreon Platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Mitchell. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten, Lieutenant Burke Nielsen, Lieutenant Smith, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeants Adal, Scott, the Colonel Merrill, Veterans Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easingwood, Hills, Lyons, Malik, Nitton, Medicae Rolfe, Tontkin, Conscripts England, Evangun, Goodwin, Honorary Members Balgrim King, Syker Smith, Cyan Gaylard, Aquilon Nassim.